True North is an original podcast by Due North PR. We do everything we can to ensure that everything we broadcast is fair and factual, but the opinions expressed and statements made by our guests are theirs and theirs alone. These opinions and statements do not reflect the views or opinions of our presenters, Due North PR, or the podcast itself. You're listening to True North, a regular roundup of business and community news and developments in Northland. Hello, and welcome to True North. Thank you for taking the time to listen. It's Wednesday, the 9th of July. I'm Peter Heath. On the show ahead?
Yeah, it was all hands on deck and acknowledgement that the ship is sinking.
I speak with Fabian Hanik, Assistant Plant Manager at Ngāwhā Generation Limited's geothermal power station near Kaikohe, about the perfect storm of circumstances that came within a whisker of forcing the closure of this vital piece of Northland infrastructure, and the business lessons that came out of it all. First, though, a look at what's happening in business and community news across our region. Northland's application for regional deal funding from central government, drafted by the region's economic development agency Northland Inc., was not among those in the first tranche selected by the government for progression. The government is progressing with the deals submitted by Auckland Council, the Otago Central Lakes region, comprising Queenstown Lakes District, Central Otago District, and Otago Regional Councils, and the Western Bay of Plenty region, comprising Tauranga City, Western Bay of Plenty District, and Bay of Plenty Regional Councils. City and regional deals is the government's initiative for establishing long-term agreements between central and local government. The program's intention is to secure long-term commitments, funding, and resource opportunities to support councils to make improvements in their region, for example, to roads, infrastructure, and the supply of quality housing. The Northland Inc. proposal identified 4 key strategic areas of economic growth that would benefit from greater alignment between central and local government investment and a greater degree of joined-up thinking between key government agencies. These were future energy projects clustered around Marsden Point, marine manufacturing projects clustered around Whangarei, primary sector projects mainly across the west, mid and far north, and visitor economy projects across the region. It included a request for a portion of GST generated within the region to be retained within the region to support local economic development projects, and for the development of smarter immigration and investment settings that would result in a targeted and responsive immigration framework to attract talent to where it's required. However, RNZ reports Infrastructure Minister Chris Bishop is saying that while a deal could possibly include regulatory changes, the coalition government was, quotes, not super keen on bespoke regulations for particular regions. The announcements made by the government around the 3 successful bids did not go into detail about what would happen to the bids that were unsuccessful in this tranche, or when the next set of bids would be assessed. The Department of Internal Affairs website says only that, quotes, a process will be established for the ongoing development of future deals, close quotes. We will include links to news stories about the government city and regional deal decision in the show notes. The Far North District Council has been ordered to pay more than $210,000 to its former chief executive, Blair King, who left the role in early 2023, just 11 months after he started. But that's not the full tab. Legal costs surrounding his departure, well, they top $220,000, and that's not even counting the internal time and costs to find his replacement. The numbers were revealed through an information request by RNZ, and they point to a troubling pattern. Of the last 4 chief executives at Far North District Council, only one, Sean Clark, left the job without a dispute or a costly payout. So what went wrong? King joined FNDC in March 2022, but by February the following year he'd resigned, citing a toxic workplace and claims that elected councillors, including Mayor Moko Tapania, were ghosting him. According to a ruling from the Employment Relations Authority, things started to unravel during a meeting in Kaikohe in November 2022. What exactly happened there? Well, that depends on who you ask. The accounts differ. But what's clear is that the working relationship between King and Tapania broke down soon after. We've included a link to the RNZ story in the show notes. Kaikohe District Council has unveiled a brand new website to highlight the district's exceptional lifestyle and economic potential. The platform is designed as a central hub, positioning the district as an ideal place to visit, live, work, and invest. The website content has been shaped with local input and reflects the distinct character, values, and aspirations of its people, with updates and new additions as the website is developed. The web design concept was created and developed over 15 months by Brand with Soul and Max Ostler, both Kaikohe-based. From regional data and success stories to practical tools for investors, entrepreneurs, and new residents, the website offers a comprehensive introduction to life in Kaikohe. Kaikohe District Council Mayor Craig Jepson said the website was a milestone for the district's development, giving it a platform to tell the world who it is. He said it was a great step forward in how Kaikohe welcomed growth, celebrated its uniqueness, and invited others to be part of its future. Paul Thompson, Kaikohe District Council Economic Development Lead, said the platform was a valuable tool for boosting local enterprise and attracting outside investment. He said it was a resource that was grounded in what makes Kaikohe unique, while also being future-focused. We've included a link to the website in the show notes. And finally, Whangarei-based electrical solutions provider Makai has been tapped to deliver 5 solar and battery-propelled electric catamarans for use as local ferries in Samoa as part of a United Nations-backed initiative. The vessels will be powered by solar energy and onboard batteries. The first was already under construction in Whangarei with the help of local partners Circa Marine. The remaining 4 vessels will be built in Samoa by local workers trained and supported by Makai's experts, a win-win for innovation and capacity building in the region. Makai is making a name for itself in the area of electric vessels. In 2020, the company installed and commissioned the shoreside infrastructure for the world's first fully electric tug operated by Port of Auckland. And in 2022, it was responsible for the electrical design and control of the first fully electric passenger ferry in the Southern Hemisphere, the Ikarere in Wellington. The company's sister outfit, Nort, focuses solely on electric marine propulsion, and we're hoping to chat with Nort CEO Fiona Bycroft in an upcoming episode. You'll find a link to the original Northern Advocate story in our show notes. Before moving into our discussion with today's guest, an apology in advance. This was the very first interview we recorded for True North, and it's fair to say we screwed up a bit. I ended up using my laptop's microphone to record the audio at my end instead of the external mic I should have used. A real rookie error. The result is that I sound like I'm in a tin can, but the interview with Fabian Hanik was so compelling and such a good listen that I couldn't bring myself to discard it, and I wasn't about to ask Fabian to re-record. So, with a bit of help from AI, we've tried our best to clean up the audio. Please bear with us and hang in there for this really, really compelling story. I hope you enjoy it. Now, what do you do when you've just built a brand new geothermal power station for $189 million and the Climate Change Commission calls it dirty and recommends that it be shut down with almost immediate effect? That was the kicker facing the team at top energy subsidiary Ngāwhā Generation Limited, or NGL, operator of the geothermal power station near Kaikohe, the only such plant outside of the Taupo volcanic zone. And it was the catalyst for a remarkable, award-winning Northland business story. With me today to help tell that story and draw out the lessons for business leaders everywhere is Assistant Plant Manager Fabian Hanik. He led the engineering rescue mission that saw Ngāwhā go from dirtiest cab on the geothermal rank to zero-emission poster child in just 2 short years. Fabian, good morning. Hi. First things first, we all think of geothermal power as clean, sustainable, renewable. How does a geothermal plant get to be a greenhouse gas emitter?
Yeah, no, thanks, Pete, for having me. It's actually a really interesting topic. So where does that CO2 come from originally? So it's deep underground, and it's just coexists there as carbonic acid with the water that makes up the geothermal reservoir. So it's much the same as where you get natural soda springs all around New Zealand. So you get a little bit of bubbling of CO2 that comes out. And we used to, New Zealanders used to travel up and down the country and collect these soda spring water drinking sites to consume that water on their trip. So much the same principle, but on just a much, much bigger scale. So as we extract a significant volume of liquid out of the ground, that CO2 was under immense pressure deep under the earth. And as we bring that to surface, the pressure drops and the CO2 comes out of solution. So much the same as having a Coke bottle and opening up the cap, and that CO2 comes out and bubbles.
Perfect analogy. So why were Ngāwha's emissions so much higher than other geothermal sites around the country? I mean, I believe you were the second highest emitter of CO2 after Ohaki, which is between Rotorua and Taupo, by some significant distance. So what was it that made Ngāwha unusual?
So it's just the uniqueness of every geothermal field in the world. So we are by no means the highest CO2 concentration. There's some plants in Turkey which actually produce more CO2 than a coal-fired power station. It depends how much of a certain mineral or the geology where that reservoir is present in, where that geothermal fluid is being extracted from. So it's just luck of the draw on the decision to develop the certain fields. And there are fields in New Zealand that actually have a higher CO2 concentration than Ohaki and Ngāwha as well. So who knows, they may never be developed, or they may be developed using similar technology that we've applied at Ngāwha.
I'll come on to that in a minute, actually, about how you sort of might apply what you learned out of this exercise. But first, when the Climate Change Commission published this preliminary report with the recommendation that a high-emission geothermal plant should be closed within a decade, where did that leave NGL and Top Energy? I guess you were pretty much out on a limb.
Yeah, so actually the very first thing that happened when that report came out, very few of us had read that, or the Energy News article that came out, and our operators definitely didn't read it. Russell, our CEO, actually sent out an email trying to stem our concerns quite quickly. I guess in his mind, he was quite concerned that people would see that and think this was the sunset industry and that would start applying for new jobs elsewhere. Because that draft report from the Climate Change Commission, they had some pretty strong language in there. Ironically, we'd actually just only employed one of the top C&I technicians from the refinery. We had some young engineers who is actually an operator for us now from the refinery as well. And so that was probably the biggest kick in the guts, that they had sort of just left the refinery thinking, great, I can still maintain employment in the far north, and yet here it is again, we're going to be shut down, or they're going to have to find new roles somewhere else.
The plant had only just opened, right?
Yeah, that's right. So I think we commissioned New Year's Eve, and then in February so it was literally 2 or 3 months after we'd just commissioned this plant. And remember, this isn't like some investment firm from offshore and $200 million is nothing to them. This is literally the cash and the money from the people of the far north. So I think that made it far worse from us, knowing that the Climate Change Commission could write something like that with such disregard for where that money actually was borrowed from. A little bit short-sighted, but I get the intent of why they said it, because we had such a large disproportionate amount of CO2 emissions from that said fleet for power generation. But yeah, it was pretty heavy-handed, and I guess that's why it was later redacted from the final report.
Redacted. It wasn't hidden, was it? It was taken out.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So But there was a second thing going on at that same time, which kind of made Ngāwhā all of a sudden a lot less attractive. So on the one hand, you got the Climate Change Commission saying, "No, you got to shut this thing down." On the other hand, carbon prices were an aggravating factor at the time, weren't they? I mean, you were looking at a $12.8 million annual emissions trading bill at one point, weren't you? That couldn't have been an exciting prospect for a small consumer-owned business like Top Energy.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. So, as you can imagine, with a business case to build OEC5, that wasn't factored in, or there was a factor for carbon emissions, but no one really forecasted the emissions to increase in price so rapidly, as we saw. I think it was late. Can't remember the date. Anyway, we saw an abrupt increase, and that rate of change wasn't slowing down. And then a lot of external advisors were indicating that would carry on to $200-300 a ton for CO2. That's definitely not been the case. I don't think it even reached $90, and now it's back down towards $65 a ton. So had that price reached $100, it was roughly a third of what we made in electricity sales would be spent straight to the carbon tax. So all of a sudden, you've got a third of your revenue being as a new expense that you hadn't really been planning for. So yeah, absolutely big kick in the guts. It was unsustainable, basically.
So here you got a brand new power station. You built it with Far North electricity payer money. It's a fantastic piece of kit. It's a really top of the range piece of kit. You're all very proud of it. But on the one hand, you've got Climate Change Commission saying no, too much carbon. On the other hand, you've got the carbon market basically threatening to price you out of existence. So, talk to us about what was it like in the camp there, Fabian? That must have been a pretty energized time for you guys, because you must have been looking at what your options were. So what were the options? Did you consider selling or using the carbon dioxide you were emitting? What talk to us about the thought process.
Yeah, so it was all hands on deck, and acknowledgement that the ship is sinking. We had a bit of a focus group to, with more of the management at Ngāwhā and the greater Top Energy group, and we're sort of just spitballing some ideas around. And they're the absolute cliche things like, let's grow some algae, let's bottle the CO2, let's make some SAF gas for sustainable aviation fuel. All that technology, fairly unproven, and the quantities of CO2 that we were talking about here, we may have been able to shave off, say, 20% of it, but not 100% of the emissions. It's just, because remember, we're talking about 128,000 ton CO2 equivalent per annum here. Roughly 100,000 of that would be CO2, and 28,000 was methane equivalent, or being converted to CO2 for the with that 28 multiplication factor. So yeah, it was let's do something. We got a few consultants in. We looked at what was able to be done. We quite seriously looked at bottling the CO2. But again, it's not our core business, so it was uncharted waters for us, and there was definitely a aversion towards that. And the company we were partnering up with saw the blood on the floor effectively, and I feel they took advantage of us and tried pushing us down to some unfavourable terms. And that probably gave us a bit more fire in our belly to really see what we could do.
So you'd made the decision you were going to try and reintroduce the CO2 back into the ground after having taken it out. Talk to us very briefly about how that worked. I understand it was very much an in-house job. It was you guys using your own expertise and your own knowledge, and something that you were very proud of, and it's something that's kind of won you various awards and various nominations for awards. So you literally bolted together. And I might be oversimplifying a little bit, but it wasn't far more complex than you bolted together a few bits and pieces of pipes and high pressure tubing, etc., that you had on site.
Yeah.
You made sure it was all rated and spec for use, and you basically put your university sort of physics and chemistry into motion and created a closed loop system where the carbon dioxide that was coming out of the earth was being recaptured and pumped back in. And you told me earlier that you used some incredibly small amount of money to do this.
Yeah. So that first initial phase of the experiment was effectively free. The ability for gas to travel in the fluid stream is quite well understood from a geothermal sense, from a fluid dynamics point of view. My previous role as a drilling engineer, we quite often had to simulate and model gas bubbling up a vertical column. So there was lots of areas in the plant where I could introduce the CO2 in a vertical column of water in the reinjection stream. So, back of the envelope, some numbers, punched it through. I'm like, yeah, it'll probably work. So I went from, it'll probably work to, it is working. And I can still remember the very first day that we introduced OEC1's gas into the fluid stream. So OEC1 being our organic energy converter, one of our geothermal binary plants, the one of the twins of the initial pilot plant from 1999, when we first commissioned Ngāwhā. That was a small pilot plant in the CO2 reinjection phase as well. And I still remember being on the radio, slowly introducing the gas, and monitoring everything. Another team was in the control room. We were out in the field, walking around the plant, making sure everything was healthy and happy. And I remember the valve just being fully open and on all the gas being re-injected down in the fluid stream, and the guys in the control room couldn't really believe it. It was like, all right, sweet. And and from then on, we're like, well, we've just gotten rid of half the gas from one plant. Well, let's try doing the next phase. So we looked at re-injecting the gas from OC2. Try not to get too much into the technical side of things, but we've got some re-injection pumps there, so it increases the pressure to allow that fluid stream to be reintroduced into the reservoir. And we co-mingled that gas with the suction side of this pump. A lot of, again, externals are saying it can't be done. There's too much uncertainty. And we said, great, we'll experiment with it, and there'll be more certainty once we've done it. So it actually turned out that the vibration of the pump reduced because, we were allowing that gas bubble to collapse. It was kind of like a little mini shock absorber on the inside of the pump impeller. And we then, once we did that experiment, this was about 5 months after we'd done OEC1, and we then said, wow, Station 1, Ngāwhā generation, zero emissions. All that gas was going back down the ground. We went out, bought a whole bunch of pies because, nothing like a big pie session to celebrate. And I sort of sat the guys down and said, this is a huge, huge moment for us at Ngāwhā. This is sort of to secure the future of Ngāwhā generation. And I think they were all quite chuffed with themselves.
Just very briefly on the on the question of verifying that you were indeed putting all of your CO2 back into the ground. It's a fairly easy claim to make. We're capturing it and we're pushing it back down. How's that verified, and were there any third parties involved in that verification process?
Yeah, so under the New Zealand Emissions Trading Scheme, the geothermal plants are critiqued on how much emissions they have. And so we do an annual return on a calendar year basis. And so part of that is collecting samples throughout the year. So we typically do about 24 samples throughout the year, and we analyze.
These are air samples around the point of the potential point of emission.
No, unfortunately, it's not that simple. When the regulations were written, they never thought that CO2 reinjection was ever going to be a thing. So what you do is you look at how much is coming out of the ground from the various fluid streams, so the steam and the brine. What is the proportional flow and the concentration, and what is the concentration of flow of what's going back down in the ground?
My understanding was that you guys were given carte blanche by the company, by the management team, the leadership team, and by the board to just go ahead and get done what needed to get done in order to achieve this really quite remarkable result. Pretty much from back of the envelope calculations to sort of achieving verified sort of 100% reinjection. What takeaways, what lessons do you think are available to the rest of us from the way the company and the board dealt with this issue and gave you guys the carte blanche to do what you needed to do?
I think we, as an operations team here, we've proven year on year that there's a high level of operational excellence, I would say. There's a lot of trust from the board in our team that we know what's best for the plant. We definitely don't get undermined and second guess for anything we do here. And I'm very grateful from the board on that. The early experimentation, of course, helped a lot because it was a bi-weekly report back to this small team we had to look at CO2 mitigation or mitigate the sinking of the ship. So that would have then been communicated up to the board as well to say, hey, look, this is how it's going. Actually, the guys at Ngāwhā are having really good success with CO2 reinjection, and it would have just been a case of, carry on going with that. And I know a lot of the other generators, likes of Contact and Mercury, that was a stumbling block for them because they just had so many chefs in the kitchen that things that were roadblocks for them because of an overzealous hierarchy within the business was stifling their innovation, which wasn't the case for it all. It was, yes, we think we can do this, and that was the end of the discussion. It wasn't no, I want my own opinion on this, and we're going to get some external to review that opinion.
Yeah, that sounds brilliant. I mean, other boards and other leadership teams may have made you bring in, a fleet of consultants to sort of verify the work that you did, but this kind of smacks of a degree of trust that these guys had in you and the team that perhaps other might not exist in other organizations.
Yeah, no, absolutely right. And I think because we do have a very small management structure here at Ngāwhā as well, it's myself and the GM, everyone else is by and large out there doing it every single day. So there's a very close understanding of the plant and how the plant behaves. And I think that allowed us to go forward, as well as myself and our GM. We're out there every day tinkering with the plant, trying to make it run more efficiently. And I think because of that, there was no someone sitting in an ivory tower half a country away trying to tell you can't do something. And I think that healthy team structure that we have here allowed us to move forward so quickly.
Yeah, well, a great story all around, Fabian. Congratulations to you and the team. I'm happy to be able to sort of give you yet another platform to tell the story, because I think it's a story that's worth telling, and it's a story about innovation. It's a story about trust. It's a story about capability, and it's a story about backing yourself. when the temptation might be not to do that. So congratulations to you all, and all the very best for whatever's next at Ngāwhā, and I'm sure we'll be talking to you about various other aspects to do with electricity and electricity generation as we roll out new episodes of the pod. So thanks again, and lovely to have you on.
Oh, awesome. Thanks for having me, Pete. Really appreciate it.
And that's all for today's program. Many thanks indeed to Ngāwhā Generation Limited's Fabian Hanik. True North will return in 2 weeks' time on the 23rd of July. We have still to lock in our guest, so I'm not going to tempt fate and tell you who we hope it will be. But you know by now, don't you? It'll be worth listening to. I'm Peter Heath. Thank you for joining us. True North is an original podcast by Due North PR. To support our work and to stay on top of Northland business news and analysis, access the pod on Spotify, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook. Please do take that small extra step and subscribe, like, follow, comment, and review, as it helps others find the show. Please also share it with those who may not yet be aware that we exist. As the New Zealand media landscape continues to change, we rely on your support to continue doing what we do. Please let us know what you think about the podcast. Ask questions or make suggestions about topics and people we should feature by emailing us at truenorth@duenorthpr.co.nz. We do read every message.